If you've been here before, you know that I enjoy humor. I like to start off with jokes. Bless you. You know what's funny about humor? It's even fun talking about the ways that humor is humorous. It's funny. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight as to laughter as medicine. Yes, medical grade humor here. Here we go. It is said that young children laugh as much as 100 to 200 times a day, compared to a large majority of adults who only get 0 to several laughs daily. Yet laughter is good not only for the body, but also for the soul and spirit. An internet site advises this wellness tip. Go on and laugh, whether your preference is giggle, to chuckle, or guffaw. Here are dozens of well-being benefits of laughter. Increases antibodies in saliva that combat upper respiratory infections. Secretes an enzyme that protects the stomach from forming ulcers. Conditions the abdominal muscles. Relaxes muscles throughout the body. Aids in reducing symptoms of neuralgia and rheumatism. It changes perspective. Has positive benefits on mental functions. Reduces blood pressure and heart rate. Helps the body fight infection. Releases endorphins, which provide natural pain relief. Tightens stomach muscles. Helps move nutrients and oxygen to body tissues. And makes you feel good. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. How many egotists does it take to screw in a light bulb? 1. He holds onto the light bulb and waits for the world to revolve around him. How many Marxists does it take to change the light bulb? None. The light bulb contains the seeds of its own revolution. How many Zen Buddhists does it take to change a light bulb? None. They are the light bulb. All right, enough humor. Until next week. Let's dive right into this whole topic that we lifted up. The title of it, Seasoned. We're in a new season. You've probably heard that well-worn phrase, variety is the spice of life. Spice, flavor, it's all in there. It is part of what we're talking about here. So let's dig down on the Old Testament first. Numbers 11, verses 4 through 6. What's happening there? The rabble among them had a strong craving, and the Israelites also wept again and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt for nothing, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. Now, first of all, it might make you a little bit hungry. It might also be reassuring that even ancient times, there was this food craving. We all enjoy a difference, a variety. But it's also pointing to the challenge of Moses in leading all these people. We're talking about 600,000 plus people in that next section. So the Lord said to Moses, gather for me 70 of the elders, whom you know to be the elders of the people, and the officers over them. Bring them to the tent of meeting, and have them take their place there with you. I will come down and talk with you there, and I will take some of the Spirit that is on you and put it on them. And they shall bear the burden of the people along with you, so that you will not bear it all by yourself. Wow. There's a lot happening there. Our human tendency is to be fearful when one person that we like, that we trust, gives away some of that power to others, even if it's for the greater good. Moses needed some help. He receives help. And this help created yet another problem. The end of that scripture, there is a challenge. My Lord Moses, stop them. But Moses said to him, are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his Spirit onto them. Interesting stuff. We have Moses leading Israelites, this huge peace that we all celebrate, and yet there are constant frustrations that he is having to navigate as the leader. And it happens at the beginning, happens even later on, the complaints, the frustrations of leading that many people. And so there's an answer. The power that was there solely for Moses is shared. Dispersion of that responsibility. Now here's something relevant to all of us. Have you known any person in your life ever that is never satisfied? Doesn't matter what happens in life, it's a complaint. You can go on and on. I'm sure you can come up with your own examples, but someone wins the lottery. This mansion, it's got too much breeze these days. Whatever it is. Anything that you find in life, you can find a complaint to it. It's entirely possible. In fact, I have that little cartoon in my office, and it's heaven, but it's got a complaint box, and it says, some people aren't really satisfied unless they can complain. So even in heaven, I'm sure there exists a complaint department. And there's ways to become dissatisfied. The first one is to not get what you want. The other one is to get what you want. Because, let's face it, you're still going to be who you were if there isn't a substantial shift. People can find ways to complain about anything. It's possible. Even those, actually, we're moving into what changes the shift. Those who became prophets of the Lord, you notice they weren't complaining. A shift happened within them. And that's a bit of the lesson, not only for Moses, who shares power. The Spirit goes upon the 70 and more. And people complained about that sharing of power. But another thing happens. Those that were given some of that Spirit, something shifted there. It was deeply satisfying for everyone who was touched by that shift. It reverses the equation. And now it becomes that connection with God. It also changes the equation for each of us. What has God done for me lately? Becomes, what can I do? How can I be of help? How can I be more in alignment with what I know God to be? That's the constant question each of us must answer for ourselves. Lord, how can I best serve you? Is there more that I can do for you? God becomes that spice, that leaven, that salt, that restores flavor to life. So if you're feeling like things have stagnated, become stale, old, doesn't have that flavor that you may have felt at a different part of your life, time to shift your attention, time to shift your focus, time to ask that question, what can I do? How can I serve the Lord? This past week I did watch, finally, that film, Hacksaw Ridge, based on a true story. And FYI, it's pretty gruesome, but it's true. It's a true story. Desmond Thomas Doss, born February 7th, 1919, lived to March 23rd of 2006. United States Army Corporal, served as a combat medic with an infantry company in World War II. He distinguished himself in the Battle of Okinawa, saving 75 men, becoming the only conscientious objector to receive the Medal of Honor for his actions during the Second World War. His life has become the subject of books, obviously this movie, but the one thing, and probably the most powerful thing of that movie, it's hard to get through, but at the end, it's an actual interview with him, because he never held a gun. He refused to hold a rifle. And in that moment, where he goes back to save people, he kept on saying this one word, Lord, please help me get one more. And that assisted him. And he saved 75 soldiers. One other phrase that we're addressing in the Old Testament. The Lord said to Moses, is the Lord's power limited. That was from Numbers 11, verse 24. When we consider things that in our own life, we may consider limitations, all those ways that we kind of corner ourselves, paint ourselves into a box in a corner and suggest that there's no other way. This is just how things are. That one line, the Lord saying to Moses, is the Lord's power limited? Is it? This is one of those questions that if we're feeling stuck, if we're feeling like things are not where we want them, it's another opportunity to simply broaden that perspective, our perspective, and offer the possibility that something other can enter in. God can enter in. So those people that became jealous of others who were doing spiritual powers, that's the very same issue if you follow along with how the Old Testament connects with the New. John said to Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he was not following us. But Jesus said, 'Do not stop him, for no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us.'" Now I want to spend just a moment of pause there. Whoever is not against us is for us. It makes a lot of sense when Jesus says this. And I think the challenge with that phrase is it's been used and appropriated by people that are not Jesus. Whoever's not for us is against us has been used by for many different reasons than spiritual rationale. And that line in particular, if it's not kind of given the context of what it's said for, can not only be a problematic phrase, but it can also, could be a stumbling block. Where Jesus follows this up with is the list of things that we're not supposed to do. Getting in the way of children who understand God and maintaining their inherent connection with the living God. He says, "If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea." Now that's a pretty vivid description there. And the other ones are even more vivid and descriptive. But it drives home a very central point in the teaching. Both Jesus, Christ, and Moses, they were unifiers of the people, bringing people together for a greater good. They both demonstrated, they modeled, they lived out lives demonstrating that peaceful uplifting and getting along in a peaceful way is a good thing. They not only said it, they modeled it, they did it. They told others to do this. Both the Old Testament, the New Testament underscore that. There's one central theme that they underline: to help all people find their own connection to the living God. In other words, lay down those divisive tendencies we all have. Those are human qualities and not godly qualities. Now I need to unpack that perhaps challenging verse that we all either heard or read. The eyes causing us to stumble. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into hell, where their worm never dies and the fire is never quenched. On the one hand, this phrase comes across as fairly gruesome. On the other, it serves as a very stark reminder that so many of us can continue to get overly caught up in the drama of this world, this play of illusion, of our senses looking at this and saying, this is all there is. Our eyes love to be deceived. This is why we love to go to the movie theaters, constantly check our Facebook statuses. Anything that will distract us from what is presently happening in our life. Jesus gives us this as a stark reminder that this world is largely illusory, not the true reality. Very important one, but also ultimately a temporary illusion. Even science tells us we are 99.9% empty space. The distance at a subatomic level between the nucleus, the electron, is empty space. It's like where we are here to where the sun is. It's empty space in there. Science can be great. And there's one fatal flaw of science, which is it can study things that are lesser. Science has not figured out how to study more advanced entities. Hasn't figured out a way to enter into higher wisdom, higher understanding. That is the gap between what you can prove and what is beyond the ability to have instruments to capture data. And that's the gap between the two. Faith, science. Now before we go, I'm going to wax and wane philosophically a little bit here. Immanence versus transcendence. Immanence. Immanence is something inherent. We all have bodies, and our bodies have an inherent quality to it. It functions in a certain way. Now, the doctrine or theory of immanence holds that the divine encompasses or is manifested in the material world. In other words, we're here in this world. We also, by virtue of having these bodies, have an immanent piece of God with us. And while that immanence is there, it's also perfectly possible to be so enamored with this physical creation that we forget and lose awareness that there is more to life than beyond the physical. We're designed with free will. So, we have this little bit of a tension point between immanent with the transcendent. The power that we can access is both immanent, it's with our body and our capabilities, our free will, and yet there is also the transcendent force. That force that is beyond the finite. And it takes both, the immanent and the transcendent, to make lasting change in this world. And while that may seem a little bit abstract, it has everything to do with the main teachings, both from Moses, both from Jesus. There is more to this world than what we see with our physical eyes. There is more than what we see and hear with our ears, our physical ears. We can sense all of that if we anchor ourselves primarily in the spiritual dimension. So I'm going to give you a challenge this week. It's the spiritual challenge. Here it is. To look someone directly in the eyes this week and say something uplifting to them. This could be a compliment, a faith encouragement, a simple moment of gratitude, a blessing, a high-quality smile, something that's genuine. Now here's the qualifier, the caveat to that. It has to be with a live human being in real time. Doing this through the television to someone that's there does not qualify as that. So it has to be a live human being in real time, and you have to actually look them in the eyes when you do this. One time this week, if you can do that. A compliment, an encouragement, gratitude, a blessing. Something uplifting to some other human being this week. Pretty simple, huh? That in itself is your own blessing. You will be giving and receiving spiritual currency. In a pinch, if it's getting late in the week, FaceTime and Skype can do. Preferable to have live human being. And since we're talking about flavoring, I'll throw in one last story, which a priest was here many years ago giving a eulogy. And he started off by saying, "Don't be a dirtbag." And we could stop there and just end the sermon, but there was more to the story than that. The ancient history of salt, and this is where salary comes from, saline. Ancient world, some Roman soldiers were given their salary by being given salt. Salt in that time was not the purest, so you'd have these pouches, these bags, that would carry salt and inevitably a little bit of dirt. And if you were going to flavor a soup, and it was a community soup, you would put that bag in, flavor it until it's right, and then pull it out. Eventually, if you lost salt and you're out of flavor, yes, you just became the holder of the dirt bag. And now you know. So we've learned two things. Don't be a dirt bag, and lift someone up this week. Give them a compliment, those two things. So I'm going to end with the last quote from Jesus here that relates to all this, the last line. "For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its saltiness, how can you season it? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another." Have salt in yourselves. Become that spiritual seasoning that you bring to every moment, to every situation in your life. Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another. Amen.